doing good. I'm doing good. I see you got some good questions already in the chat going.
Let's go, guys. Listen, this is Blake. Listen, tell them a little bit about yourself. I told them about what you are to me. That's just, you go ahead and share a little bit about your story and how you got started.
I will, and it's an honor. And I'm gonna make sure I ping these questions. I'm gonna come back to some really good questions. How you pay nonprofit employees. I see how long do you need some lawyer to help draw some paperwork? How long does it start before starting a nonprofit? Do you receive funding? I'm gonna definitely answer that question for sure. So, one, Ms. Durham, appreciate it. I'm always super excited to get on these lives with you. So for those that do not know me, my name on IG is a nonprofit guy, but my real name is Blake Nathan, CEO and founder of the Educate Me Foundation. Similar to story, like every nonprofit founder has this founding story that we love to share out to our community. And so my story is, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I went to an HBCU, Tennessee State. I had this aspiration of being a pilot. Like, a lot of people don't know that about me. I wanted to fly like commercial airlines. But sitting in those classrooms, I was like, man, I started working at after school programs, working with our youth, working with even at daycare centers, right? Working in an infant room. And I had this passion for education. And I ended up moving to Indianapolis, started my teaching career. And as I was a teacher in middle school, I was like, man, I'm the only Black male teacher in my school building, and we're serving majority Black and brown kids. And I'm like, that's a problem. And then nationally, I realized that, man, only 2% of the teacher workforce is Black men. And I'm like, we look at our school to prison pipelines, we look at our overdiagnosis of a SPED, referring young men to special education services. And I'm like, maybe it starts with our teacher pipeline. Maybe it starts with our teacher workforce of ensuring that we got a good reflection of young people that see their teachers that look like them. And so our mission is like to recruit and retain more Black and brown teachers for our school systems and our school districts. And that's my passion. Like, I've been doing it since 2014. And since 2014, man, we have taken over 500 high school students at HBCU college tours because we wanted to expose these young people to HBCUs because they produce over 50% of the Black teacher workforce. And then in 2017, I wrote my first 6-figure grant, and we got it through the state of Indiana. And so that was my introduction into like grant writing and actually, really going for a big grant. Like, you usually want to start on the community foundation side, a local organization, but I didn't know what I didn't know at the time, right? And I said, what, I'm gonna go big or go home. And then fortunate enough that we did receive the funding for that, and we got renewed 2 years ago. And so we're still in that current grant cycle. And so I'm really big on fundraising for your nonprofit. How do you generate revenue for your organization? And I know, Crystal, you talk about all the time, the profitable nonprofit. The myth, and I guess the misconception is that people say like, okay, you're a nonprofit that you can't bring in money, right? You can't raise dollars. You got to go out here and do work for free, and you got to beg, borrow. And it's like, no, like, that's not how it's done. The Grammys, the Recording Academy that hosted the Grammys a few weeks ago is a nonprofit. The NFL before 2017 was a nonprofit. IKEA is a nonprofit. Yeah. Nobody's thinking about those organizations and companies are charging people for their services. And so I'm really
so how do we change that mindset though, Blake? Like,
yeah, I think it's what we're doing now is education, right? We educate our community that, like, you're a nonprofit doesn't mean that you can't charge people for your services or participation in your program. So like when we go to the YMCA and we're paying that membership dues and those membership fees to have access to that gym, we're not thinking about like, oh, the YMCA is a nonprofit, right? When you're shopping in IKEA, you're not thinking like, oh man, like this is a nonprofit. And so I think our community really needs to understand you can have a nonprofit. You can bring in millions of dollars into your nonprofit as long as the dollars are going back in the community and are serving your nonprofit and really enhancing your mission and your vision for your organization. Like, that's the really
exactly
right?
Yeah. So Blake, why do you think that people, when they get their 501c3, because I hear people say that to me as soon as I got my 501c, oh, you can get grants now. Oh, you can get grants now. And it's like, no.
Yeah. And I think,
why do you think they think that?
Because I guess on social media, right, in the world, they're like, hey, since you're a nonprofit, you get grants. You can get grants as a for-profit company, right? But the nonprofit grants, you know, it's way more nonprofit grants than there are for for-profit companies. And so when people get a nonprofit, like, oh man, I can get these grants, I can, you know, get people to donate, and that is all true. But it's not as easy when you're first starting out as you think it is, right? You have to have, and we can talk about this all day, every day. You got to have a clear vision, right? You can't be out here thinking about all the things I want to do. When Crystal, you started your nonprofit, you're like, man, I want to save the world, but a funder doesn't want to hear that, right? They want to see, okay, Crystal,
right?
What do you think you can do in the next 6 to 12 months if I give you $50,000, right? And if you can't clearly articulate that, they're going to take their funds and invest into somebody else. And so the biggest misconception is that when people think that they can get grants when they first started out, it's like, oh, it's just easy. You know, I'm sharing my story. People want to like open their pocketbooks and their checkbooks to me. And it doesn't happen like that at all, right?
I wish it was that easy.
Yeah, exactly.
I wish it was that. We'd be billionaires with our nonprofit by now if it was that easy.
Exactly. And so that's.
So tell me about your first fundraiser. I know you told me about your first grant. Tell me about your first fundraiser.
Man, so our first fundraiser was actually a party. Like, so we did like a kickoff event. So similar story to you. Like, so I left teaching after my 3rd year in the classroom, and I made this big deal about it. I booked out this nice mansion. You know, I invited the who's who to come out to celebrate. We had tickets. You know, we had food and drinks and everything like that. And of course I needed sponsors, right? So I didn't want to come out of my own pocket for this event. And so we came with a sponsorship letter and a sponsorship deck and a 1-pager. And we kind of went around the community and talk about, we're hosting a fundraising event that we can create give more financial resources back to teachers, right? And support more students in the local community. And so I left the classroom, and that kickoff event that I hosted was like me telling the world that I'm leaving the classroom. I'm diving right into being a nonprofit executive full time. Nothing else is a security blanket. And so that was also my pitch to supporters and funders for that event. But you just don't know like how much people really give you in-kind support. Like the drinks that we had, the food that was served, like all those things were donated in kind. So that eliminated a lot of our budgetary items. Even our DJ, like our DJ's like, hey, I support your mission. I'll come out there, do pro bono. And so I think those are also the big benefits of a nonprofit. Like people are donating only not their monetary, finances, but they also are donating their time, right? There's equity into your mission and the support of your organization. So I remember that.
And that's a way to build and that's a great way to build your portfolio and your budget. Yeah. Because if someone donated all their services, their products to the organization, you take that as value. And so you put that in your budget for next year when you go do the next event. And someone says, well, how much does it cost to run that event? You're able to go down a list. This is how much it costs. This is how much we need to run that event. Over the years, just hearing people say, oh, I'm out here and I'm doing this. When I say, well, what's the numbers? What was the budget for that? Yeah. They don't know because they're just doing things. And it's so important to build that portfolio, that overview of your nonprofit organization. So if someone is looking to donate or want to do an event, you have that. Yeah. And just for an example, when I was looking for a toy sponsor, I remember calling one of my corporate sponsors and they was like, well, what did it cost you last year? I was able to pull my documents up and say, this was the budget for the toys last year, and they cut me the check. Now, had I said, oh, I don't know, we probably had about 50 toys, 200 toys, they'd be like, you know what, we're going to send you $100 because I'm not clear. So when you're clear when it comes to fundraising and funding your nonprofit organization, we want to make sure that we know what our numbers look like. And you talk about that even when it came to grants. You like, Crystal, what does the numbers look like when you're talking about that event that you put on? What is the program? What's all entail? Tell the story. And right? So when you're talking about that grant and we're coming to a grant writer, we got to do more than just go, oh yeah, I want to help the homeless. No, we got to tell the story, right? Yeah. Talk about what that story looks like.
And I think you just mentioned it too, like when you say I want to help the homeless, and so let's say you have a funder and they're like, man, I have X amount of dollars I want to give and support people that are combating homelessness, combating, you know, child obesity, whatever the case may be, the cause may be. The funder wants to know like true metrics, right?
Yes.
They really want to know, okay, if I give you X amount of dollars, how many people are you planning on serving? How do you plan on serving it? Can you give me a timeline on the activities and engagement that you're going to have with this direct population? Because a lot of times when we're thinking about like, okay, I need $50,000 to serve 100 people, right? And so you're telling the funder like, okay, it's going to cost me $5,000 per person, right? But the numbers a little bit more is deeper than that, right? It's like how much like, are you going to do some workshops? Are you going to do some training? Are you going to do, you know, are you going to help with them find employment? Are you going to help with housing? Like all those different things you got to think about in your budget, and all those things make up that full budget, right? And so I always tell people when you're writing these grants and you're thinking about fundraising to support your mission, it's not just, oh, the end goal is like, I want to end homelessness in my zip code or in my community or in my city. It's like, okay, what type of programs am I going to have surrounding to get to that end goal, right? And those are the benchmarks that any nonprofit should be able to measure. It's like, okay, month one, we're going to do a workshop. We're going to do grooming. We're going to do etiquette. We're going to help them find employment opportunities, right? We're going to help them find housing, steady income, all those different things. And that's how we disperse or allocate that $50,000. Right? Yeah.
It has to be so detailed, right? So even if you're thinking about, let's say that you say we're going to help 50 homeless people, right? That homeless person may have a criminal background. How are you going to help them get employment with a criminal background, right? So you have a lot of people say, I want to help people coming out of prison. What is that? What does that look like for someone that you're looking to sponsor that? How can you take that person coming out of prison to the next level to be successful? And so it includes all of those programs, all of those metrics have to go into it, and they all have to have a dollar sign. It can't be that one sentence. And I think that when we, as visionaries, when we're looking to help somebody, we don't go into the depth of it, right? So I always tell people when they come to my clarity class, I always say, what would you want done if you were in that situation? So say like if you were a young girl and you were molested at a young age, what did you need in that moment? Now you want to do a mentorship program, but tell me, what do you need in that moment? Because sometimes we think where we are now, no, that person needed something different in that moment. So we got to take them back to what did you need at 9 years old, at 8 years old when you were going through this? What could somebody said to you to make you speak up? And then they start thinking like, wow, you're right. Yeah. What did I need? Did I need someone to ask me a question? Because I remember saying that no one asked me why I was angry, why I was acting out. I think if one teacher or one principal or one counselor would have said, why are you acting out? I may have said something, you know. So when I go to do my mentorship program, now I know what that child needs, right? So, and that breaks down the program. So now I know what's going to deliver and help this child not go through what I went through, not having a voice, not being able to speak up, right?
And you know what you just described to everybody is the R&D process, right? Like it's the research and design process of your program. So when people say, I want to create this program and I want to get a grant for this to support this program, there's a time in the project, right? Your timeline, your project, where you're just doing research and you're designing your program. So maybe your program doesn't start the first 3 months. So that first 90 days, I'm surveying my user base, which is your unique avatar, your client base, right? So you're serving them, you're asking questions, you're doing think tanks, you're doing, you're doing surveys and all these different things, and you're gathering that data to really figure out what is the best way to support this user group that I want to work with. Right? Because again, going back to your homeless scenario, do I don't want to work with single mothers that are homeless, drug addicts that are now trying to clean themselves up, right? And they're homeless. Like, so you have to understand, like, who's that unique population of individuals that I want to work with. And now when a funder hears this story, they're not just thinking you're all over the place, right? They're like, okay, Crystal knows exactly her age range, the gender, race, ethnicity. She knows all these things about her clientele because her clientele is specific to her organization. So, you definitely hitting some good stuff on the head.
Yes. So how important is it when an organization is coming and they're unclear. Like if someone's coming to you, right, and they have this ideal, but it's unclear, what are the first 2 steps or 3 steps you can take them through that they need to go back and do? Because like we said, everybody is not. Oh, Sharice said, get to the questions. Hold on, because we coming up with our questions. Let's go back.
Oh, I didn't see the questions.
Let's get to the questions that they asked. Let's go find their questions. Thank you, our moderator, because me and Blake can get to talking.
Oh, so I saw
let's
a
go
question.
back to
how long before starting the nonprofit did you all receive funding? So you want to hit that question first, Crystal, and hit it back?
Okay. Yeah, so when I started my nonprofit, I started fundraising. So I started getting funds in quickly. I didn't wait for a grant writer. I knew that I was not eligible right away. So I just started doing funds, selling items, Krispy Kreme coupons, candles, whatever we did for the ABC fundraiser that they had, we were doing fundraising. And then I started getting a corporate sponsor. When I got a corporate sponsor, I started getting corporate grants from that individual. And so I started 2015. Our first big event was 2016. It was fully funded through corporate sponsors. So within a year, I was getting corporate sponsorships.
Yeah. And so I think for me, like Crystal said, so I know a lot of people are big into like t-shirts, like everybody want to sell a t-shirt. And so for us was, instead of you donating directly, like, hey, I'm going to give you $30 to my organization, we sold t-shirts. Like we printed some t-shirts with our organization logo on it. And we said all the proceeds, which was true, 100% of the proceeds of this shirt purchase is going to support our nonprofit organization. So if it took me $5 to buy the shirt, $5 to print, and we sold it for $30, $20, which is the profit, the proceeds from that t-shirt sale, was going back to the organization. And the big thing too, I'll tell, and Chris, you probably teach this in your classes too, like when you first start your nonprofit in your state, right, you're not tax exempt yet. So you just started your nonprofit,
right?
LLC, you got your board members, etc. And then you go out and get your tax exemption status. Everything that someone has donated is tax deductible. So when I first started my nonprofit, I knew I didn't have my tax exemption status just yet. So I was telling people, I had a GoFundMe page, right? I had PayPal donations going live, everything. So people were donating to me. And then when we got our tax exemption status, guess what? Everybody that donated me in between that time that we got our exemption status before, I sent them a giving contribution letter, a tax deductible contribution letter, end of year statement, right? Saying, hey, thank you for donating $30, $100, right? I think we started off by raising like $5,000, and that was enough money to get our paperwork done, get some things in order organizationally, so like some systems in place. And so you can start raising money right before you actually get tax exemption status.
Because ours we raised was $22 to $2,500, and that was to help me go to class, get our nonprofit, and and some things. But of course, our board donates, and we do have a question. And she said, "How hard it is?" Let me see. Let me go back to her question. How hard is it to start a homeless feeding nonprofit? Now, it's not hard to start a homeless feeding nonprofit. That's not hard. But how do you plan on supporting it, right? How do you plan on supporting it? Where's the funds going to come from? What, who's going to cook the food? All of those things. And you know what? Another thing is that nonprofits fail to do. I know they want to feed the homeless, but they 99% of those don't have insurance, and they're going down and they're feeding the homeless. And if something happens because they fed the homeless, maybe they were allergic to something that they cook, could be a lawsuit, right? So you want to make sure that you're covered. And these are things that we don't think about when we're starting our nonprofit. We just want to go help, but you could be feeding somebody something that they're allergic to, an ingredient that you put in that food, and they had no idea, right? And now your nonprofit can be liable. So if you're going to feed the homeless, count the cost of what the insurance would be. And you can look up Nonprofit Alliance Insurance Company to find that out.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking some good stuff. I think the biggest thing is like feeding the homeless is like, I also think about this. Like when you're starting a nonprofit, you have to ask yourself, what is something that is sustainable? Like, is it something
sustainable?
that,
Yeah.
is it a program? Is it an initiative? Is it an event? Is it an activation? Right? Is it a service? So when someone says like, I want to feed the hungry, that's wonderful. We see it all the time during holiday season. We see it all the time, like, random Saturdays. And I get it, but ask yourself, like, is that an activity that I'm doing, or is it an activation that I'm doing? Because your nonprofit, Crystal, you can say, hey, it's Christmas, it's Thanksgiving time. We're gonna give out turkeys. We're gonna have people come to a gymnasium. We're gonna give out side dishes and all this stuff, and we're feeding the hungry. But once Thanksgiving is over, is that now we're not doing this anymore? So you have to ask yourself, nonprofit, outside of feeding the hungry, outside of feeding the hungry, like, what else are we doing as an organization?
What else?
Now,
yes.
Too, so.
Yes, and you could think about, like, I had a class where I talked about Soup Kitchen A, Soup Kitchen B. Soup Kitchen A was serving soup for the homeless. That's all they wanted to do. But Soup Kitchen B says we want to shorten our lines as we feed the homeless, right? So in their minds, they had programs and resources set up for those who can't get soup. They were doing surveys. What do you need? And then they were helping them get their services through other nonprofit organizations. So Soup Kitchen B had let me see. We don't want to serve you soup for the rest of our lives. We want to shorten these lines and get you off the street. So there's a difference when you want to go feed the homeless. As Blake said, what is the long-term goal? Because if I was the homeless, and I've been homeless before, I would say, listen, I want another food for you. Can you help me get off the street? Don't come down here no more. I'm sorry. Don't come. I tell people, stop feeding the homeless. If you don't have it in you where you all can come together and get your organization structured, operating, and get the funding and go buy land or building, get the homeless off the street, then feed them. Then feed them. And then teach them to feed themselves, because the homeless will end up running the whole organization because they'll be appreciative, right? Now, I know we ain't going to get everybody off the street. The Bible says the homeless will always be with us. But I think 80% of them out there don't want to be homeless, right? So we can broaden our thinking and our vision to say, if I was homeless, would I want somebody just continue to feed me?
No, yeah. That's
right. That's getting deep, right?
Yeah. I saw.
But let's see who got another question.
Says,
Blake, go ahead.
Hello, how does a nonprofit employees receive a paycheck? So, again, one thing about nonprofit is a business. So I want to make sure everybody knows this. Like, having a nonprofit is a business. It's the difference between a for-profit and nonprofit organization is literally in its name, right? A nonprofit, the profits at the end of the year go reinvest back into organization. So Crystal's the CEO of her nonprofit. I'm the CEO of my nonprofit. If I bring in $10 million this year, I can't take $8 million at the end of the year and bring it and keep the money, right?
Why not, Blake? Why not? I want that $8 million.
Yeah, because no one owns the nonprofit, right? It is governed by a board of directors. And so that's one of the biggest things. So again, going back to your question, I see a question too, like, how do you pay people? How do people receive a paycheck? You have to get a payroll processing system, right? Gusto, ADP, Paycor, Paycom. I mean, any of those systems, you can QuickBooks, right? Make sure your books are tight. Any of those systems, you can disperse payments to your employees. Now, in order to pay people, you got to have money, right? So, it's like the money's coming from somewhere, right? So it's coming from your organizational budget or programmatic budget, and that's how you're going to make sure you bring the payment to your staff. You can do bi-weekly, you can do monthly, right? If you have 1090 employees versus W-2 employees, but you want to make sure, and I learned this the hard way, you want to make sure you consult with a CPA or someone that truly understands financials, because when it comes to paying, the one thing that a nonprofit is not exempt from as far as taxes is payroll taxes.
Yes.
And so you still have to make sure you have the right system in place when you have decide you want to have a W-2 employee versus a 1099. And so you want to make sure you have a payroll processing system in place that's going to do all those calculations for you, and have an accountant on staff or on your board or pro bono in your network that can look over your books and reconcile everything for you too as well.
Awesome. awesome. That broke it down. That really broke it down. We got another question. Hold on. Let me see. That was a good question.
Yeah, that was good.
But you want to make sure that your nonprofit is profitable. As Blake said, you don't want to get 10 million, you take 8 million. How do you acquire corporate sponsors? Oh, that's a good question. So to acquire corporate sponsors, number one, what I did for me, I went into, let's say Walmart, that's a corporation, right? I went into Walmart and I introduced myself to the manager. I didn't ask for anything. I just told her who I was, what I was doing in the community, and that was it. And then I started building a relationship. Whenever I went in, I would see her, say something to the store. Oh my goodness, the store looked good. We would just chit chat and cut it up. And then I say, well, who's your community person? You know, who's your community leader here? Oh, let me go introduce you to so-and-so. Mm-hmm. So now I go in, I get introduced to the community person, right? Give her my information. So then I'm building that relationship with the corporation, right? So, and I did this for all Walmarts that was in my area. Because you can go to all the Walmarts, 10 minutes, I think a 10-mile radius, and you can get grants from every last one of them. And so I went into and introduced myself and built those relationships. And that's how you start your first corporate sponsor. But you want to make sure that your organization is structured, because they're going to ask you for some documents. You're going to want to send them a report of what you did with the funds or the gift card or the donations or any pictures. You want to keep that communication going so that you can go up the corporate ladder and get more grants. Okay, so you don't want to ever just go in and ask them for anything without building that relationship. That's the worst you can do.
And I think, Chris, you kind of gave me a good alley-oop. Like when people are writing grants, you actually you receive a grant, receive sponsorship, donations. You want to make sure you're documented. So you want to make sure you're capturing this, like videos, photos. Yes. You want to ask for permission. Can they send you their brand guides so you can use their logos at the event? So once the event is over or your program is over, you did what you need to do under that grant cycle, right? And you submit them their report. And some funders ask for like a biannual report. Some ask for once the event is over, I want to have a follow-up meeting, kind of talk about the glows and the grows of the event. What is your success of the event? So you want to make sure you're capturing what happened in that event. Having a videographer out there, like asking questions like, hey, how was your experience at the event? Like, how is it important for you to actually have the opportunity to be in this event? And so when you're actually thinking about getting more sponsors from that last sponsor, most times after the first year, it's kind of easier. I'm not saying it's guaranteed. It's easier to get another sponsor the next year because now they have something visually they can see, right? You have your social media engagement, the hashtags you use. You got pictures, you got videos, you got testimonials. And now the pitch is a lot easier to that sponsor. So
yes. And your board should be doing the same thing. So when we get into getting corporate sponsors and then now we want to go get state grants and everything, you want to make sure that your board are active, that they're donating to the nonprofit organization as well, because they're going to ask you this. They're going to say how much of your board is given on a monthly or quarterly basis. And if you say, no, we don't have none, nobody giving, they're not giving, you most likely will not get that grant, because why should they give you funding if your own board is not supporting you? And that's why it's so important to build board members who believe in your vision. And Blake, we're going to, what time is it? But here's one thing that we definitely want to tap into is because a lot of founders are so afraid to go out and build boards. They have this thinking that someone's going to come, like you said, we're not the owners of it, right? We're servants of God. God's called us. We're founders. We're not the owners, but they're feeling like I can't trust nobody. Somebody's going to come in, but how would they know if they don't try? Speak to that with the board, with your experience in grant writing.
I think the board is like you said, Crystal, is key. One, because like you said, most funders ask for the makeup of your board. Like they want to know their bios, who they work with, race, identity. Because guess what? If you have a funders like want to support like diversity, equity, inclusion work, and your board is not diverse, they're like, I may not want to support this organization, right? And I call it my starting five. So I'm really big into sports. So and the Hawks are playing, so I'm gonna use a basketball analogy for everybody who's watching. So I call it my starting five, right? My starting five for my board, and when you try to find your board, is someone that is in accounting. Like I just mentioned earlier in this live, like you want to have someone that knows your numbers, that can look at your QuickBooks, look at your profit and loss statements, look at your budgets, and give you expert advice, right? Making sure that we can forecast out a year to 2 years of where we'll be at in our organizational budget and our revenue. So someone in accounting, someone in legal, right? Crystal has someone phenomenal on her team that's making sure her organization is compliant.
Yes.
See the big word, compliant with the IRS, right? I will tell anybody, you want to make sure you talk with your legal team, people in your, legal representation, because they're individuals that on your board that needs to know about the jargon in MOUs, contracts, signed, proposals that you submit. And you don't want to be like, oh man, I don't know what they mean in the dissolution clause, right? I don't know what they mean in like the amendment section of this contract. So you want to have someone in accounting, someone in legal. I say someone that knows your community as much as you do, right?
Yes.
And that's someone that's like, hey, Crystal, I see someone saying they're going to invest a lot of dollars in youth development or in homelessness, right? Oh, I didn't know that was going on. Thank you for bringing that to my attention, right? There's a lot of things that happen behind closed doors that we don't know about. A lot of things on Capitol Hill that we don't know about. So you want to make sure you know someone in the community-based side. Also someone in corporate, right? A lot of corporate organizations, you talk about corporate sponsors, a lot of corporate organizations, they're invite-only grants, right? A lot of corporate entities have this corporate responsibility coordinator or VP over corporate responsibilities. That means a for-profit company say, you know what? We're going to invest X amount of dollars every year into the Black and Brown community. We're going to invest X amount of dollars into financial literacy, X amount of dollars into health and wellness, whatever the case may be. And so you want to know somebody on your board that can understand how to navigate those kind of conversations and partnerships potentially for your organization. And my fifth person is someone that is in politics but not a politician. So prime example is a House bill that was going out in one of the states that our nonprofit is serving, and it's millions of dollars that's being shuffled around that our organization should be in a position to receive some of these funding, right? So you want to have somebody on your board that understands like what is the House bills going around from a municipality standpoint, a city standpoint, a local community, a county, a state level, right? Because as a nonprofit founder, you're not going to know about all these things that's going on, and that's why your board is super important to support you and bring this information to you and say, hey, Crystal, here's an opportunity for us to partner with the Chamber of Commerce. Here's an opportunity for us to partner with Google or Nike or whatever the case may be, Walmart. They do a lot of stuff in the community, right? And so my starting five: accounting, legal, community, corporate, and then also politician, political, but not a politician.
Right.
So.
Right. Make the correction.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. Listen, guys, if you're getting value out of this, could you imagine coming to sit and listen to us for a couple hours and talk and learn about funding for your nonprofit organization? If that is you, we have an event coming up March the 19th, right? We have free seats until Monday. After Monday, it is $297 to get into our 6-figure funding secrets, right? We shared a little bit with you guys tonight. We touched some gems on it tonight. But if you guys really want to get in and get to pick our brains and listen to how we're going to help you to really fund your nonprofit organization, you want to click this link and you want to join. Now, somebody said they're there. That's it. You definitely want to get in, because as of Monday, it's no more free seats. It will be going for $297, right? And of course, we'll have a VIP where you get to chit chat and talk with us in Q&A with Blake and I personally, right? You get 1 hour with us. So we're excited that you guys join us on tonight. This is virtual? Yes, it is virtual, right? This one is virtual. But hey, listen, our next one's gonna be live, right? In person, right? Where is the three? The link is pinned at the top, right there, pinned at the bottom. The link is there, or you can DM the word funding. So if you DM the word funding, our team would definitely go ahead and give you the information, but you definitely want to get into it. Did we see any more questions, Blake, before we go? I know we had one in the beginning, and you was like, you didn't go back and answer. What did she say?
It was one about the paychecks. It was one about fundraising before you start your nonprofit. And I just see somebody in here too say, I lost my nonprofit because I didn't know about the yearly payments to pay the government to keep the nonprofit running. So
yes, that's a big one.
I'm gonna share a quick story. And this is what I say, man, I can tell anybody about how if you lose your tax exemption status, I was there, right? So 2016, in the nonprofit space, remember I told you earlier in this live, when you start your nonprofit, you're not tax exempt yet. So if I register my nonprofit in the state of Indiana, Georgia, Illinois, New York, whatever, I have my nonprofit started. I got my bylaws, I got my board members, and then I come to Crystal and her team. I joined the Impact Circle, and they do my 1023 application, right? I may not get the tax exemption status back until maybe 60, 90 days, right? Depending on how fast the IRS goes. The IRS retroacts the date to when you started the nonprofit. 2 days. Tax exemption status date, and then when you actually launch your nonprofit. So if you don't file your taxes within 3 years, because you may not bring any money to your nonprofit. You maybe just got the nonprofit, you established it, it lays dormant. We see this all the time, right? People get the tax status, 3 years comes up, letter comes in and says your nonprofit status has been revoked. It's not a death sentence, right? I lost my tax exemption status back in 2017 because I thought I had 3 years. We didn't bring in that much money. So I was like, okay, I got a 3-year window. I'm going to do it the 3rd year. Didn't realize I was at year 4. Right?
Because of the date.
So I started my nonprofit in 2014. So I thought that, okay, I get my tax exemption status in 2015. So I had 2015, 16, and 17. Uncle Sam said, no, we gave you the status since 2014. And I'm like, wow, okay. So there's something to do. My Gym to Sunflower 3G. You have to write a letter to the IRS. You have to do your tax returns. It may be 0 tax returns, right? This is free game. Gotta have 0 tax returns. You want to have a CPA that can make sure any year that you didn't file, that you make sure you do those tax returns for that year. Potentially, you don't have to worry about doing your 1023 application all over again. But a team like Crystal, her team, make sure you DM Crystal tonight. Right. Yeah. You want to get that nonprofit back up and going, right? You do not want to lose those years of being established just because you got your tax exemption status revoked. So you can get it reinstated. You can get your. This happens all the time. So if you put that in the comment, shout out to you for being transparent and vulnerable. It's not the world. You can get reinstated, and your organization back to going, receiving millions of dollars, and you're good to go. But I want to make sure
and we had someone that we did. I think hers was like probably about 8 years that she didn't file. And of course the IRS want that money, whether you made money or not, they want them taxed. That it was like close to almost $800-900 she would have to pay. And then we had to do them separately. So it is a way to get it done. It is a way to get the great thing about it is if you come in and we reinstate you, it'll take you back to the date that you started. So that's the great thing about, and that's what we did with her. We got her back in, and she was able to go back those days because you don't want to lose those years.
Those years are I'd rather pay the tax returns and pay whatever fee it is because those years are irreplaceable.
That's money. That's money. That's grant money right there because it qualifies you to start getting grants as long as everything else is in place, right? That is structure, operating, and ready for funding, grant ready. So listen, guys, we want to thank you for joining us. Don't forget, click the link. You want to register. The seats are free for now only. Monday, it will be going to $297 for our 6-figure funding secrets. We're going to go into depth. You guys are going to get on here and learn some stuff. So if you have your nonprofit, come on and join us. Or if you're even thinking about it, you might as well just come on in and get the tea so that you know how to get started and get ready. So click the link, join us, or DM the word funding. DM the word funding. Any last remarks to our people tonight?
excited. I love doing this, man. People's like, live on a Saturday night. I'm glad everybody's being engaged.
Yes.
Get great questions, right? Great questions. I'm questions. You all, right? So anytime I put something in the chat, man, I'm reading it. I'm excited. I see a lot of people still saying funding in the chat for you, Crystal.
Yes.
So good. Are you saving this live? Thank you for doing this. So we're really big on educating our community. You should be a profitable nonprofit. You should not have to worry about begging, borrowing as a nonprofit. You should be able to generate revenue through multiple lanes, right? Grants should be a lane, fundraising through events, funding raising events, sponsorships, donations, fee for service, all these different things. And so I'm excited to have this masterclass with you, Crystal. And then you thought this was a lot of information.
Right. Because we and you, we get to pulling off each other's energy. We get to hearing it because guess what? We're both founders. We've been where you guys were, right? I built a 6-figure nonprofit organization. So did Blake. So we've been where you are. And so we don't mind giving you the information because why? It is our communities that needs the funding. And we're going to make sure that if you guys are ready to lock in, we're going to help you get it. So don't forget, DM the word funding, join our class, right? Our master class. But as of Monday, don't DM talking about you want to get in. You're going to pay that $297, which is way worth what it is, what we're putting it out. But we wanted to definitely come in and make sure that you guys get to chop up with us and learn our 6-figure strategy on how we was able to fund our nonprofit organizations, right? So God bless you guys. We'll see you here tomorrow. We're coming back. We'll be back here tomorrow. Come with your questions. Same place, same time. We'll be hitting you. Same place, same time. We'll see you guys at 8 p.m. on tomorrow. And hopefully we'll get to go live on Facebook too.
We'll get it right. We'll get it right.
We'll get it right. I'm going to have to
I'm gonna try. I can try to do it.
Okay. Awesome, guys. God bless you. I see you shortly, Blake. All right. Bye-bye.